Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the Moondrop Joker, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank inToit Reviews for providing the Moondrop Joker for a review. To greatly appreciate it. inToit Reviews, you rock. Please check out the link down below in the description for inToit Reviews' YouTube channel and his website. Please give him a subscription if you haven't already, and tell him I sent you. All right, so the Moondrop Joker, this will set you back $80 from your bank account. It is a closed back monitoring and tracking headphone. It has 50mm dynamic drivers, 68 ohms of impedance, 106 decibels of sensitivity, and a frequency response range of 15 hertz to 22 kilohertz. It comes in this rather large box, which in my opinion is overkill for an $80 headphone. Get some artistic flair and some branding on the front, and some specs on the back. Taking off that sleeve, and you're greeted by an area for your headphones to sit in, and then an accessory box. This is kind of overkill. It's kind of trying to make it look more premium, but in my opinion, it didn't really. You have a foam insert that's covered by a silk covering for your headphones to sit in. The accessories that you get are a fabric cable, which is actually rather nice. It's a little bit on the short side, being about 4 foot long, but it is nicely braided and twisted, and you have dual entry 3.5s to go into the ear cups, and then you have a 90-degree 3.5, and then you get this very nice 1/4 inch adapter. And of course, you get the headphone. So the Moondrop Joker is an $80 headphone, and it feels it and looks it. Very much a plastic build, and it's kind of thin headband. You got some nice cushioning here, cups that kind of do this number, so if they have this little spring mechanism to bring it back. They're rather fat on the cups. It's extremely light. The only metal is the slider, and if you get it in the right light, you can actually see the metal underneath the headband. It's extremely thin. Does not fold completely. They do rotate slightly, and it just doesn't sound very solid. Doesn't feel very durable. I'd be afraid to drop this. I don't think it would last very long in a very heavy hitting, very task heavy type of environment. I think that it would break rather easily because of its durability issues. Comfort is okay. It's an all right feel because of the lightweight, and it doesn't have a whole lot of tension, so it just kind of plops on your head and disappears. Isolation of outside noises is not good. This is probably somewhere about the 40% of outside noises being blocked. It just kind of barely muffles outside noises. If you're in a louder environment, if you're going to be trying to do some monitoring or tracking, you're going to hear outside sources, and you're going to hear outside noises, and it's just going to be a little bit of a distraction. But it's an okay for outside noises, not very good for a closed back of isolation. The EARPADS are comfortable. They are slightly angled, and they are perforated on the top and on the bottom, on the outside and on the inside. You have leather on the outside and on the inside, and then you have this like fabric-y type of feel. It's actually a rather comfortable pad, and the angle kind of pushes the headphone slightly forward. As you can see, the cups are slanted, and it's just a big, thick headband ear cup system. It's just kind of a odd shaped headphone for a monitor. The Moondrop Joker is not the easiest, but not the hardest headphone to drive. It is a little bit source picky. 68 ohms of impedance, 106 decibels of sensitivity. Most dongles will not drive the Joker very well. It will get them to volume, but you can tell that it's lacking in sonic performance, and it just needs a little bit more power. Most desktop setups and DAPs will be able to push it, and then also mixer boards will be able to drive them very well. So gear that I use them on, I use them with the Mytek Liberty DAC2, Mytek Liberty THX HPA, the AUN X1S GT, Odyssey Deckard, JDS Labs Atom Plus DAC and Amp Stack, the SMSL DO300, the Drop THX AAA 1 Linear, Tor Audio Roger, the Hibby R5 Gen 2, and also the Sony WM1A. And then the mixing board that I used them on several occasions was the Allen and Heath QU24. I found that the Joker was more favorable to a warmer source. It just added in a little bit more body, and it tamed the upper mids and treble region a little bit and just made them a little bit more pleasurable. Putting them on a more neutral and analytical leaning source, and they became a little bit fatiguing and just a little bit unpleasurable to listen to. And so I preferred them on a warmer source. So Moondrop Labs says that the Joker is a monitoring tracking headphone. What are people looking for in a monitoring tracking headphone? Disregard the price tag. What are people actually looking for in a monitoring and tracking headphone? Is a natural and neutral reproduction of the live performance being broadcasted or recorded. This includes myself as a weekly church sound technician and also for my other personal endeavors outside of YouTube. So what is a natural and neutral reproduction? Natural is realism. It's reproduced sound that matches everyday real life audio. And neutral is reproduced sound that is free of colorization, that is not natural. So what is being sought after in a monitoring tracking headphone is an accurate reproduction of tone, timbre, note weight, and it has to have good detail retrieval and resolution, and it must be able to reproduce the stage alignment accurately so that any of the faults in the broadcast or the recording can be corrected on the fly. In other words, a monitoring tracking headphone needs to tell the user what is happening without having to pivot between listening to the headphone and the live performance separately, or have them on, take them off, have them on, take them off, and confirm everything. Have not, you need to be able to just trust the headphone. And when it comes down to myself, I need to trust the headphone to be accurate and true to the live performance. So with all that said, here are my honest audiophile sonic impressions of the Moondrop Lab Joker. Let's start with the bass. The bass of the Joker can be described in one word: anemic. The bass is somewhat mid-bass focused, but it is very, very light or very little impact at all, and there's no texture. The bass of the Joker is rolled off from about 100 hertz, 80 hertz, all the way down. There's like no sub bass. Often in sub bass present tracks, I didn't hear it. It just wasn't there. I wasn't able to feel it. I just wasn't able to get that information. The Moondrop Joker just didn't display it. Mid bass was a little bit more present, but it really didn't impact the sound at all. There was not a lot of punch, a lot of slam to the bass, and it was just kind of a very thin sounding. And then the upper bass is the same way, very thin. It doesn't really add anything to the sound. It's just a very thin and anemic sound signature. The tonality is all right, and the timbre is decent, but it's not a very impactful, very natural sounding bass whatsoever. And then the mids are very lightweight. They also have a thin note weight, not quite as thin as the bass, but it is a little bit thin. And then they have some elevated upper mids, and at times they can be considered borderline shouty. They do have a tendency for sibilance, and they have forward vocals. The mids are kind of uncohesive and unbalanced. The upper mids are very much the focal point, and they do a nice thing where they take vocals and kind of put them in the spotlight, putting everything else a little bit to the sides and a little bit behind. If you're a vocal lover, the Joker will present the vocals in this very pleasurable way and kind of put the focus on it, but everything else kind of takes a back seat. And the upper mids are more elevated, and this can cause issues if you're more sensitive to the 2K, 4K region with shouty mids. I found that instruments kind of sounded a little off balance. You had a little thinner, lesser impact in the lower mids, and then in the main mids, and then in the upper mids they became a little bit too much elevation and could be a little too aggressive in its presentation. But overall, if you're a vocal lover, the mids have this naturalism and just presented in this spotlight, even though the note weight is a little bit thin and it sounds a little too airy. And then the treble. The treble is light and fluffy, overly airy, and it has a tendency to be a little bit hot in the lower treble, especially if you're sensitive in that area. And then it's prone to fatigue because of that, a little bit more, too much sizzle and energy in the lower treble region. I found that the treble had this kind of approach to things a little bit on the cloudy side and the fluffy, and it just overly airy and didn't have a lot of note weight. And then the lower treble has a lot of presence and it's a little bit too sizzly and energetic and can be a little bit fatiguing. But for the most part, it does an okay presentation of the treble. Soundstage of the Moondrop Joker is a little bit small, but we are talking about a closed back headphone here, so I'm not going to expect a ton of width. Depth is a little bit small. You really can't read into a stage very well. And layering is okay. It's not the greatest at placing things and being able to separate and give you space. But you're going to be able to differentiate some of the instruments as far as being separate from each other. Imaging is a bit three blobbish. You have the right, you have the left, and then the center. And in the center is always the vocalist. Center is always vocals. Everything else is to the right and to the left. And I found that when things decayed, instruments and vocalists, when things decayed and you kind of crossed over and went from one side to the other, it kind of jittered and stuttered, and you would have this weird resonance warble effect, especially noticeable on higher octave instruments or vocalists. And so cymbal work, brass instruments, strings, and woodwind instruments tended to have this weird effect where things would while they were decaying, or they would just kind of jitter and you would lose some of the information, and they just didn't decay naturally. It had this very unnatural effect of warble. And then also I found that being always focused on the mids vocalist in the center, it was kind of right, left, middle, and things would just kind of jitter across the stage. You didn't really get the smooth transition. Detail retrieval and resolution is, yeah, it's all right. It's not the greatest, but again, we're talking about an $80 headphone here, so you can't expect it to burn down the world with exceptional detail retrieval, but you are going to miss some stuff, especially as I mentioned in sub bass and then some other information. It just doesn't pull out a ton of it. And what it does resolve of what it pulls out is it's okay. It's not the greatest. At times it can be a little bit harsh and a little bit glassy and glary, especially in the uppers. Tone and timbre, it's a little bit on the plasticky side, and instruments don't quite sound natural. I was listening to a flute being performed live through the Moondrop Joker, and it just sounded like one of those toy recorders that I had as a kid. It didn't sound like an actual brass flute. It sounded plasticky and didn't sound real. A clarinet did not have the body, and it didn't have the organic timbre that they have, and it just sounded very thin and lean. And then a grand piano just didn't sound very alive and realistic. It didn't have the authority and the power that a grand piano has. It sounded like it was an electric keyboard, and it just didn't sound realistic. So tone and timbre does struggle with the Moondrop Joker. How does the Moondrop Joker compare to a couple of monitors that I use on a regular basis? First up, we have the SENNHEISER HD280 PRO. The 280 Pro is well built, way better built than the Joker. This is a similarly priced headphone to the Joker. It folds up into various positions and it'll lay flat, has a lot of nice cushion and padding, and overall it's just a better built, feels more durable headphone. Unfortunately, it does have an attached cable. It does have a long cable and it's single entry, which I prefer on a monitoring tracking headphone. Sound wise, the 280 Pro is just more natural and accurate sounding, has better note weight, and overall it's just a more neutral sound signature. It is a little bit thick and on the bottom end in the bass, and can get a little bit muddied up in the bass signature, but for the most part it's a very well controlled and detailed and resolving headphone, especially at its price point, and it's just a more accurate and true monitor tracking headphone than the Joker. And then at a higher price point, and this is my reference monitor tracking headphone, is the Austrian Audio HiX60. The HiX60 is metal built, very durable, folds up, has a single entry for your cable, and I find it to be extremely comfortable, and it's not very heavy at all for being a metal build. And for the sound signature, the HiX60 is a very neutral and natural presentation. You have accurate note weight and very good details and resolution, way better than the Moondrop Joker, and also has a better presentation in the stage. It doesn't force feed the vocals like the Joker does, and it is a more accurate stage, follows things across, and you have a better accurate display of decay and attack with instruments, and tone and timbre is natural on the HiX60, but we are talking about something that's way more expensive. So the Moondrop Labs Joker, I do not find that they fit the criteria for a monitor, as they lack the neutral and natural reproduction of tone and timbre, note weight, and they're kind of mediocre when it comes to detail retrieval and resolution, and they have a somewhat lackluster stage alignment and capabilities. As far as an everyday listen for the Moondrop Joker, it's an acquired taste, and that's a taste that I have not acquired. And so in conclusion, I don't recommend the Moondrop Joker as a monitor, and I prefer to use other headphones for everyday listening. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on screen, subscription links, notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information down there regarding how you can contact the channel, follow the channel, support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, I want to thank my supporters through Patreon and YouTube memberships. It's much appreciated, all that you give to the channel. And I thank you very much for taking out of your personal funds to give to a channel to help it grow and to continue. It is much appreciated. If you are interested in supporting the channel, please check out the links down below. You can do it through one-time gifts with PayPal, Venmo, or through monthly subscriptions with Patreon and YouTube memberships. By joining up in different tiers, you may get access to my private Discord server or other benefits. So check out those links. While you're down in the description, also don't forget to check out the links for inToit Reviews channel and give him a subscription if you haven't already, and tell him I sent you. And then also there's links down there regarding how you like gear recommendations and music recommendations and all that kind of stuff. So check out the links down below. Don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.